We've all consumed a great deal of media about newsworthy topics such as COVID-19 and the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine, and of course, climate change. But in our 24/7 connected world, how much of that information has been misinformation? Today, I'm joined by Jaigris Hodson. Jaigris is an associate professor here at Royal Roads, as well as a Canada Research Chair in Digital Communication for the Public Interest. And she has been studying misinformation. So Jaigris, you are researching misinformation, and I think most of us have a sense of what that means, but how would you define it?
That's a great question, because I think we do all have a sense of what we think that means, but really it's much more complicated, as is many things. So misinformation is any false information that is shared either intentionally or unintentionally. So, it could be something that we think of as fake news, or it just could be, your grandma doesn't know the answer and sends you something by mistake, right? But underneath the broad banner of misinformation, there's disinformation. That's false information that is shared knowingly and for many different purposes. Now, one of those purposes could be information operations, which is another type of misinformation, and that's when, somebody like Russia maybe shares misinformation for the purposes of destabilizing other countries, so very nefarious purposes. And then there's something, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, sir, but there's something called bullshit, and that is an academic term for when people share misinformation or false misinformation, and they know it's false, but they don't care. They're just sharing it to get a reaction.
And I guess the question is, who's more susceptible to this, and why?
Great question too, right? We think, we work at universities, we're really smart people, very good critical thinkers, we think we're immune. But the fact is, nobody's immune. So we are all susceptible when we are in the right sort of emotional state or the right sort of relational state. So our relationship with other people and our identities about who we are. When misinformers tap into those things, so our emotions, our identities, or our sense of self, then we become susceptible. Every one of us can be susceptible.
And so what's the fix here? Is just getting the right information enough, or is there more that we need to do?
A lot of people think that if we just get the correct information out there, governments do this all the time, right? If we just get the correct information out there, then people make the right decisions. But it turns out, no, more information is not a good way to address misinformation. Because again, it doesn't necessarily tap into that emotional piece or that identity piece, right? So we can't simply give more information to fix the problem of misinformation. What we really need to do is figure out why people are sharing misinformation. So sometimes it's because, in a crisis like COVID-19 or climate change, people are worried and that taps into that emotional state, that anxiety. And so they'll share information to try and make themselves feel less worried. So in those sorts of cases, like being non-transparent, for example, about the number of COVID cases in BC or in an individual organization, that can be really detrimental because it leads to rumor and people sharing the wrong information. Same thing with climate change. If we don't know what's going on or how we might contribute productively to the problem, then we're not in a position to share the right information. So you really have to find that mix of sharing good information in the right way, the right time, and to really tap into people's identity and emotions. It's very complex.
And what are some of the flags? I mean, we get bombarded by misinformation every day. What are some of the kind of clues that this might not be, correct information?
Right, that's a perfect question. And I mentioned, emotions, identity, and relationships. And I think those are the three flags that we can turn back on ourselves. So first of all, am I feeling a strong emotion, positive or negative, right? Secondly is, does this feel like something that is right to me without checking? And as soon as you think that you're right and you think, I'm gonna share this because it proves that I'm right, that's a sign you gotta go back and double check, because that's what gets us, is we share something because we for sure passionately know it to be true, and then we don't double check the source. Then thirdly, does this help you feel like you're belonging to a group, to a member of your tribe? And if you feel like this is identifying you as a member of your group, maybe a political affiliation or something else, that's another time where you really want to go back and double check that information. It doesn't mean that the information is necessarily wrong, right? But these are triggers which cause us to share without thinking and cause us to spread that misinformation without thinking.
And Jaigris, just a last question, and it's kind of one I'm just personally interested in. And I think about COVID-19 and how we were just bombarded with information which could have been the correct information, but we didn't sort of have, most of us didn't have the capacity to process it. So what about just processing information just generally? What's your advice? What do you do?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, we are in an information tsunami, and that's part of the problem is there's so much out there, it becomes hard to differentiate. Well, for me, again, whenever I'm feeling a very strong emotion, I remind myself that that's a cue to stop. And you know what? Sometimes you just gotta turn off Twitter, turn off Facebook, step away from your computer, enjoy a beautiful walk at a place like Royal Roads, clear your head and take time away from the information to figure out what your information priorities are so you can go back to it with a fresh mind and not be so reactive. It's all about, checking that reactivity impulse that we all have.
Jaigris, I just wanted to thank you so much. I mean, this work you're doing is so important. It's so important for us, and we are so incredibly proud that you are a member of our community. So good luck with it.
Thanks, I'm so happy to be doing it here.